In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a toast notification in vanilla.js. So before we get into building this project, I'm quickly going to demo you what we are going to build. I highly recommend you to watch the entire video as this will help you understand a lot of cool and important JavaScript concepts. So as you can see, I have this text over here. Let's build a toast notification and a button show toast. Now if I click this show toast button, then you can see on the top center, you can see a timer and a success toast come up with a cross icon on the top right. And as you saw, once the timer ended, the notification also disappeared. So now if I click the show toast button multiple times, what you're going to see is multiple toasts pop up, and each of those toasts are going to be independent from each other and they're going to have their own specific timer set on them. So if I click on show toast multiple times, you can see each toast comes up with their own timer, and every timer has a different number of seconds specified. And as you can see, when there are multiple toasts, once each and every timer gets over, there's this cool animation in which they go back, in which they disappear. And you will notice that when the first toast disappears, the toast just below that smoothly moves up and then it disappears once its timer ends as well. So just to show you that again, if I click show toast multiple times, I'm going to wait a little and click it again. Now as this number one, this vanishes, all of them go up and then they disappear on their own after their timer ends. So you'll also learn how to add this shake effect and also how to transition each of these toasts up as the one above them disappears, and also how to remove the toast when the timer ends. And another thing you can notice is when I click on the cross icon on the top right, even before the timer ends, the toast notification will disappear. So what I mean is, if I click on the toast notification, the timer still remains, but if I click on the cross, then the timer disappears even before the timer ended. So we also have control to close the toast notification whenever we want. And lastly, another important thing you're going to learn is the toasts that we see over here are highly customizable. And what I mean by that is you can control the position of the toast, the type of the toast, whether it's success or error, and the message displayed in the toast, and also the duration for which you want to display the toast. And to do that, it's pretty simple. Once you build the entire functionality, all you have to do is change the parameters when you call the function. So what I mean by that is I'm just going to quickly open my editor and demo you. So here you can see the toast.show function. After we are done creating the main logic, all we have to do is call this function on any button click, and over there you can change all these parameters based on however you want and customize your toast accordingly. So if I change this type over here, which is of success type now, to error, and I change this message to error toast and I save it, then you can see if I click on show toast, it's going to show a red color toast because the type is now error and everything else is going to be the same. But if I want, I can also change the position of the toast now. I can change it to something like top left. If I save and I click on show toast again, you can see it appears on the top left. And at the same time, I can also change the duration of the toast that it displays for. So I can change this to 3. And if I go back to the browser and click on show toast, then you can see the duration is 3, and after 3 seconds, it's gonna disappear. So you can basically change this to any position you want. I can also make it to bottom center. I'll save and I'll go back and I'll click on show toast, and you can see it pops up in the bottom center. Pretty cool, right? So this is the demo of the project. You're going to get to learn a lot of things building this. You will understand how to stack all these timers one after the other and make each of those timers independent to that particular toast. You're going to understand a lot of things regarding animations, how to add that shake effect, how to disappear the toast, how to transition all the toasts one level up when the top toast disappears. You're also going to learn how to remove the toast before the timer ends, and a lot more important JavaScript concepts. And the cool part is, once you learn how to build this, you can use this toast anywhere in your project, and to use it anywhere, all you have to do is just call this toast.show function. Now to reach that position where we build everything out and simply use this toast.show function anywhere in our file to display the toast, I'm going to show you all the steps you need to create something like this. So without any further ado, let's get started. Alright, so this is our current build right now, and this is the final build which I just demoed. So basically I have already done a few setup before we start building this project, and it's pretty minor setup. I'm going to walk you through what I've done. So over here I just have this index.html file, a script.js file, and an index.css file. And on top I have this toast folder, and within this toast folder I have toast.css and toast.js. And within this toast.js, we are going to add all the important logic for this project. Now in index.html file, where we currently are, I just have this normal HTML document created. The main things to note is within the body tag, I just have this wrapper. And then within that wrapper, I have this h1 class heading, which says let's build a toast notification. And I have this button below it, which says show toast. And that button has a class of button and an ID of show toast button. All right, so this is not the important part. This just adds this layout that we have over here. And now to check the CSS of the wrapper, heading and button, I'm going to go to this index.css. I first of all have given a global CSS to the body and HTML. This is nothing but just setting the margin and padding to 0 for the entire screen. This is pretty common CSS, and I'm just setting the font family over here. Now in the wrapper, which wraps the entire application, the height is set to 100 and everything within that is set to center, and that's why you see this show toast being centered, and the background color is black. And the heading is obviously color white, which is the heading of the text and all that. And then there's this button which has a padding and a background color and all that stuff that you can see. So this CSS we are not that concerned with, because this is not what we are going to work with. This is just to show you a presentable UI. We are not going to be concerned with this. And as you can see here, when I hover on the button, it changes the background to gray. So we are creating this button because in our script.js, we are going to access that button, and on clicking that button, we want to call that toast.show function that I talked about. So now to get started, let's just go ahead and build our script.js file, because this is going to be a pretty simple file. The main logic is all going to go into the toast.js file. So in our script.js file, all we want to do is I'm just going to access the button that we have. So I'm going to name it show toast button, and I'm going to say document.get element by ID, and I'm going to write show toast button. All right, this will just get us that button, the reference for that button, and then all we need to do is show toast button, and I'm going to attach an event listener to this, and I'm going to listen for the click event, and here we'll add a callback. And within this callback, all we want to do is call that toast.show function as I showed in the demo. So right now we haven't created the toast object. Within that toast object, there's going to be the show function that I showed you in the demo. That toast object will be created within this toast.js over here. But for now, let me just import it over here and set it up. I'm just going to say import toast, and I'm going to say from the toast file, the toast.js file, and then I'm just going to click on this toast, and I'm going to write toast.show. And of course we haven't created this toast object nor the show function, but we are going to do that soon. And you must have noticed that over here I'm using the import toast, and to make it work like this, all you have to do is go to the index.html and make sure that you have added the type equals to module to the script.js file. Upon doing this, you can import anything in the script.js from other files. Alright, so now let's go ahead and add the toast object and the show function and all the other functionality and logic that we require. So now in the toast.js file, I'll just create the toast object that we have. So this should be export const toast. And you must have noticed I'm exporting it over here because we are importing it in the script.js. Now we will write all the logic within the toast object. Now within the toast object, we are going to create 5 essential functions, which is going to drive this entire toast notification. What I mean by that is, when I demoed you the project, you noticed that there was a timer on the left side. There was a message in between which said the success toast or the error toast. On the top right, there was a close icon. And you also must have noticed that the toast itself could be positioned anywhere, right? So I just talked about 4 important points now. Another important point, which is going to be the first function that we need to add in this toast object, is going to be the initialization. Now what I mean by that is, whenever I click on the show toast, I'm going to go to the browser, and whenever I click on the show toast, wherever the toast pops up, whether it's on the top left, top center, bottom, or wherever, the main thing to understand is when we click show toast, we need to add a container on that particular position that we pass as the argument in the show function. So if I pass top center as the position in that function, then we need to ensure that when I click show toast, we create a container in this top center, and that top center will initially be the height of the first toast that we add. So what that means is, when I click on show toast, a container will be created at the top center, and within that container, all those individual toasts are going to be appended, right? So if I have the position set as bottom center, top left, or whatever, the container is going to be created in that position, and within that container all the respective toasts are going to be appended. Makes sense, right? And if it doesn't, we are going to build it and you're going to understand it much better. So I'm going to go over here to my toast, and I'm first of all going to create an init function. Alright, now before we create this init function, I just want to note down the 5 important functions that we need to work with. So the first function is going to be the initialization function, which we have in short called as init. Now in the init function, we need to make sure that we initialize what we require. Now what I mean by that is, so in the init function, we need to initialize the container top and the container bottom. So the container top is going to be the container for all the toasts that get appended within the top of the container, whether it's top left, center or right. And the container bottom is going to do the same for all the toasts that go anywhere on the bottom. And you will understand this clearly as we go ahead and start implementing this. Now the second function that we require is the show function. And this is going to be pretty important because it's going to have all the important logic within it, because this is going to ultimately show us the toast. And now after this, the third important function that we require is a function named setRemainingTime. You can name it whatever you want, but this name seems very much ideal to me. So this setRemainingTime is going to set the time that we show in the left of that toast, in the complete left of that toast. So whatever time that gets passed over here, it's going to give us the calculation and it's going to set the interval based on that time. Alright, so this is going to calculate the remaining time for us. Now the fourth important function we would require is the setToastPlacement function. And this makes sense, right? Because we want to control the placement of the toast, whether it's in the top right, top left, bottom center, and so on. And now the last function we want to associate ourselves with is the removeToast function. This is going to ensure that we are able to remove the toast when the user either clicks on the cross button on the top right of the toast or when the timer ends. So these are the 5 functions within this toast object that we need to build to be able to create the toast that I demoed. So let's go ahead and start with the init function. Now before we start with the init function, there's one important thing you need to understand, that to be able to use this toast wherever we want, we need to make sure that we call this init function in the script.js on the top. So I'm going to say toast.init, because this is going to initialize our toast. And once that happens, then we can use the toast however we want. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and build the init function, and you're going to understand why we need to add that init function on top. So to make the toast placed anywhere in the browser, we need to make its position absolute, and that's why it works. So we need to make sure that this wrapper which we have over here in our div, our containers that we create on the top and bottom within which the toasts will go respectively, we need to make sure that those containers aren't within this wrapper. This wrapper was just created to give you this UI over here so that we can click and display the toasts, but we need to make sure that those containers are completely independent from this wrapper because they need to be their own parent. So to do that, all we need to do is we could either create that container over here, but no, that's not what we want to do. We don't want the container to unnecessarily be there. We only want it to come up when we want to use the toast. So that's why I wrote this init function over here, so that whenever you're using it in any page, if you know that page is going to use the toast, then you can just call the toast.init on top, which will basically append those containers in the index.html. And we need to add those containers independently from the wrapper. So it should go somewhere over here or in the bottom, but not within this wrapper. All this init function is going to do is that it's going to append those containers independently. So I'm going to say let container bottom equals to document dot create element, and I'm going to say it's a div. And then I'm going to say container bottom dot class name equals to container bottom. And then after this, I'm going to say document dot body dot append, and I'm going to say container bottom. All right. So this is going to append the container bottom independently in the wrapper. I'm going to do the same for the top container. I'm going to call this top, and I'm going to replace this name everywhere else, and over here I'm going to make this top. All right, so now upon init, these two containers should come up as expected. So we just need to add the styling for the container top and bottom. We just need to give it a fixed positioning and a padding top and bottom. So I'm going to go to my toast.css, and over here you're going to understand why we are doing this soon. And over here I'm going to say container top and container bottom as well, because they both will have the same stylings. And I'm going to say position, and I'm going to give it a position of fixed. All right, and in the container top I'm just going to give it a padding top of 20px, and container bottom a padding bottom of 20px. I'm doing this padding top and bottom because, as you noticed in the final build, when I show the toast, there is this particular spacing over here. So that padding does that. It adds that extra 20px. Now, to be able to see this container style in our index.html, we need to make sure that we also add this toast.css that we have in our index.html. So we could either go to our index.html, and over here below the index.css we could just add that toast.css file, or we can go to the init function itself, and within this init function in the bottom, after we have created the container top and bottom, we can simply append it to the head of our HTML page. So we are going to do just that, because we don't want it to be directly loaded. We want to do that when the user uses the init function for a particular file, right? So all we're going to do is we're going to say css script is going to be equal to document.create element. We are going to create a link, and then we are going to say css script dot rel equals to style sheet, and then a css script dot href equals to, and in this href we want to add the location, the file path of this toast.css from the index.html. So if I was adding this style sheet directly in the HTML file, then in the href I would have taken this path, right, the path of the toast.css, which would have been /toast and then /toast.css. But now, since I'm appending it from here, I need to make sure that I add that file path from the index.html to the toast.css. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to say /toast and then toast.css. All right, so after this we just need to append this css script to the head tag. We're going to say append and then css script. Now before moving forward, I realized this should be document. I misspelled it. Do the same over here. All right, it's spelled out properly now, and we are appending it as well. And I'm just going to comment all this out for now. Wait, instead of commenting it out, I'll just give this, and now it won't show those errors. All right, I'll save this. And now before we check in the browser, since I've called this toast.init over here, when we reload the browser, this script.js file is being called first, right, in the index.html. So since this script.js file is being rendered, this toast.init over here is going to get called first on its own. So that is automatically going to append this container bottom and container top in our DOM. So let's go ahead and check that. When I go to my browser, and you can see this container bottom and container top have been appended on their own. So if I even refresh this, you can see this container top and container bottom have been added on their own. So basically this gives us the control that whichever file we want to use the toast, we just have to first of all use toast.init on that, and then after that we can use the toast functionalities. Or you can just initialize this toast.init in the root directory of your entire application, and then you can use toast.show in any file that you want. All right, so now since we have created these two containers, now we need to make sure that whatever toast we add based on the position which we give, if it's top, it goes to the top, and if it's bottom, it goes to the bottom. Now before we do that, let's get started with the show function. Now in the show function, we were passing 4 important arguments. The first argument was message, second was the type, the third was the position, and the fourth was the number of seconds. Alright, so we need to make use of all these 4 arguments and then perform the logic accordingly. So first of all, let's make sure that we select the container top and container bottom. I'm going to say document.query selector container top, and then I'm going to copy this. I'm going to do the same for the container bottom. over here bottom. Alright, so we selected both the containers. I'm just going to remove this sidebar for now so that you can properly view what I'm writing. And then after this, let's start to create our individual toast. So I'm just going to say let toast is equal to document dot create element, and this toast is going to be nothing but a div. And then within that toast we have that cross icon on the top right. So let's also create a cross equals to document dot create element, and then let's make this a div as well, and then let's just keep it like this, and this should be toast. And now let's make sure that we give this toast a class name. This is going to be toast, and then let's also make sure we do the same for the cross dot class name, and we are going to say it cross, and we are also going to add a text to the cross icon that we have, and we're going to say nothing but X. So this X is going to be the cross icon basically. Since I don't want to take up the time and add any other library, so I'm just going to add the letter X over here, and we're going to append this within the cross div that we have. Alright, so now before we start moving ahead with the logic, I'm just going to go to my script.js. Let's just fill up the arguments for this show function that we have. So the first argument was a message, right? This we can just call it success toast. The second argument was the type of the toast that we want, so let's just keep it as success. If it's success, the background color will be green, and if it's error, it will be red, as we saw in the demo. The third is going to be the placement, so let's just make it top center for now, and then the last is going to be the duration. Let's just keep it as 5 seconds for now. Right, so we are passing all the arguments. Now we need to make sure that we take this top center and we change the position of our container based on what we provide over here. So this part is pretty essential for the position. We are going to break this down, this entire string down into top and center, and we are going to take them individually and style the container. So what I mean by that is, over here I'm going to write a if statement. I'm going to say if position dot includes top, then I'm going to say container top dot append child, and I'm going to append nothing but the toast, and then I'm going to say else container bottom dot append child toast. Pretty simple, right? So what this is doing is the position argument that we have, which is being passed from the show over here in the script, the position is nothing but the top center in this case, right? So we are just checking if position includes the keyword top, which in this case it does, and if it does, then we're going to append to the container top the particular toast that we created for this instance, right? So that means when we click on show toast the first time, as you saw, multiple toasts pop up when we click on the toast multiple times. So when we click the toast the first time or any number of times, for each of those times a new toast will be created, right? Like every time we click the button show toast, this toast.show gets instantiated multiple times. So each of those show functions will have their own particular toast getting created over here, right? So since we are passing top center, it's going to check if it includes the keyword top. If it does, then we are going to append to the container top that particular toast for that particular instance, right? Pretty simple. And if it's not top, then obviously we must have written bottom in the argument. In that case, we are going to append that toast to the container bottom. All right, and then later on when we create this setToastPlacement function, we are going to set container bottom as bottom 0 and container top as top 0. So we'll do that as well, don't worry about it. So now moving on, let's start adding the properties for the toast that we created on top. So first I'm going to say toast.text content. This is going to be nothing but the message argument that we are getting from here, right? Pretty obvious. That's going to be the content of the toast. Then after that we can say toast.class name. For the class name we are just going to say toast and then toast visible. All right, so this is going to, we already have the class of toast over here, but since if I just add toast visible, it's going to replace the existing class, but we also want this toast to stay there. So we are going to add toast and toast.visible so that this doesn't go away, because if we just add toast.visible, then the toast will get replaced. So we want this entire thing to be there. So we also need to add the stylings for this particular class name. We are going to do that soon as well. Now before we move ahead, we also need to make sure that we set a particular ID for each toast, because each toast is unique and independent, right? So later on when we delete them, we have to delete those each individual toasts based on their ID, based on their unique ID. So I'm just going to say toast.id, and to set a unique ID, what we can do is I'm going to go up here in the toast object, and over here I'm going to initiate a counter, and this counter will be initially 0. All right, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to say toast.id equals to plus this dot counter. All right, this is going to increment the counter, and the this keyword over here obviously refers to that object toast we have over here, since we are calling toast.show. So since show is attached to the toast object, therefore this will always refer to the toast. All right, so now before moving into the further logic, let's just add the styling for the toast classes that we have mentioned over here, so that we can at least be able to see the toast. So I'm going to go to my toast.css, and I'm going to add the styling for the toast. So first of all, we need to add position relative, and then after that we need to do a cursor of pointer, and we'll give it a width of around 300 px, and then a padding of somewhere around 15 px and 35 px, and after that we can just give the font size of the text that will be within it to 30 px. Then we can give it a font family of, let's say, sans serif, and then after that I'm going to say text align. I'm going to center everything out, and then a border radius of around 5 px, and then a box shadow of 0 let's say 15 px, and then we'll give it a color of RGBA 000 and 0.2. all right, so now initially when we add the toast class, we need to make sure that it stays a visibility of hidden, and then we are going to add the toast visible class, which is going to make it visible. So I'm going to give this opacity of 0, and then I'm just going to add a transition. Sorry, this should be transition, and I'm going to say opacity of 0.2 seconds, and then a top of 0.2 seconds, and a visibility of 0.2 seconds. So this is basically when I click on the show toast button, the show toast comes in very smoothly with a proper transition, right? You need to add a space over here. That transition, the way it pops into the screen, is what this line is going to help us achieve. So after this, we need to also add the styling for the toast visible, right? So in toast visible, of course, we just need to set the opacity to 1 over here, and the visibility to visible. And then after that, we need to give that animation, that shaky animation. So for example, if I go to the final build and I click on show, you see it shaked once, this shake animation, and I'm going to show you exactly how to add that. All we have to do is I'm going to say shake, and I'm going to add a 0.82 seconds, and then I'm going to give a cubic bezier, and I'm going to say 0.36, 0.07, 0.19. These are all just going to add the positions of where it should, or how it should animate. I'm not obviously going to go deep into this. If you want to know more about this, just comment down and I'll make a video on animation. Otherwise it's going to take a lot of time to explain you all of this. And then to make that effect come out properly, we just have to say translate, and then I'm going to say 3D, and I'm going to give you a transit of 000, and then lastly we need to add another transition and say margin top of 1 second. Now this margin top that you see over here, this is essential because when we remove a particular toast, or whenever a particular toast gets removed after the timer ends, you must have noticed the bottom toasts which are there, they slide up a level and then they gradually get removed. So basically whenever one toast gets removed, the toasts underneath that slide up a level and they get removed. So this transition of margin top is going to help us achieve exactly that. Now after this, we need to add the content for the shake animation, and also we need to do one more thing. that is nothing but we need to select the first child of the toast visible, and then we need to set the margin top as -20 px, and we need to make it important. And I will explain you soon enough why I have added this line. Now after that, the last thing that I mentioned was we need to add the keyframes for the shake animation. These are just extra things you can just add, this shake animation and all, just to make the toast look much more better. So all I'm gonna say is from 10% to 90%, we want to do a transform actually. Transform, and we're going to say translate 3D, and then -1 px, 0 and 0. Need to remove these extra parentheses. Now as I said, if you want to understand all this, you can just drop down in the comment section and I'll put up a full video regarding animations. And then we also need to do the same over here, transform, and we need to give it a translate 3D of 2px, 0 and 0. And after this we need to select 30%, 50% and the 70%. Over here we are also going to add transform, translate 3D, -4px, 0 and 0. And then lastly, for 40%, 60%, we need to add transform, translate 3D, 4px, 0 and 0. Alright, that's all for the toast styling for now. Now to make the toast visible, we need to add a few more logic down here, which I'll walk you through now. Now in the toast, we have the time remaining on the left. Now for that, to access this setRemainingTime, we have to call this function next, so that we can start adding the styles for that, and as well creating the function to calculate the remaining time. Now within this, all we have to do is pass the toast and the number of seconds that we require. Now the number of seconds is going to come from this argument that we have over here. Now we are going to fill the contents of the function soon, and the next thing we need to do is we also need to append the cross within the toast that we have created just now, adding the styles and all that. And after that, we also need to make sure that we call the setToastPlacement function over here, to which we will pass the position. And now in the second argument over here, we need to pass the particular container where we want to append or basically place this toast into. So here we just need to add whether it should be the container bottom or the container top. So since we can't add them both over here, the better way to send the container top or container bottom over here, because it could be any, right? For a given particular set of toast, it could either be container bottom or container top, we won't know. But for a particular set of toast that's been rendered, it will have either container top or container bottom set to it. Now since we don't know which one it could be, what we can do is we can just, the better way to send it to that argument is something like this. We can write container over here, we can initiate a variable let container, and then down here we can just say container equals to container top. So basically, if the position includes top, then the container that we have declared over here for that particular toast will become container top. And if there is no top mentioned in the position, then the container will basically reference to the container bottom, right? And then we can just directly take this container variable that we have over here and we can pass it over here. Since it's an OR condition, so it's basically better to attach the reference to a variable and pass it for each individual toast. Alright, so the next thing we can also do is just append another class. We can say toast.classList.add, and we can add this class over here, which is nothing but the type. And this is also coming from the argument that we have over here on top, the type. And this is going to do nothing but tell us whether it's a success or error, and based on that we can change the background to green or red. So this toast type, if it's toast error, if the type is error, then this is going to say toast error. For that we can set the background as red. And if it's toast success, where the type is success, then we can set the background as green. Pretty simple, right? So let's go ahead and add the style for that as well. All I'm gonna say is toast success. For that, it's going to be pretty simple styling. We are gonna add a color of 00B712, be green, and I want a linear gradient on it to make it look better. So I'm gonna say background image and then a linear gradient. and I'm going to give it an angle of 315 degrees and the color of 00B712, 0%, and then 5A F15, 74%. You can add all this based on your own preference, whatever color you like, and then I can set the color to white, and then I can do the same for the toast error, except obviously there's going to be color changes. Actually, we can remove this background color over here, we don't need it as much. The gradient is all that matters. We can say 315 degree and we can give a different color, let's say 7A1212, and then over here we can say FF0000, and let's let that be 74%, and then down here let's let the color be white. Alright, this should do it for the success and error, and let's also go ahead and add the styling for the cross that we have. The cross is going to have nothing but a font size of 10 px. Let's give it a font weight of 800. After that, a color of white, and then a position absolute, because we need to absolutely position it on the top right. So we're going to say top 0, right 0, margin 5px, and then a cursor of pointer, and a border radius of 50%. A background color, let's make it blue, so 004 DDC, and then after this let's give it a linear gradient as well. Background image, linear gradient, we're going to say 274 degrees, and then the color would be something like 2280 F4AB. This is also going to be bluish. I'm going to say 0% over here, 870 D1, and a 74%. Alright, this is for the color. Again, you can add this based on your own preference. And then after this, I'm going to say, let's say padding, and I'm going to give it a padding of 4, 5px, 3px, and 5px. Alright, let's also give it a box shadow of RGB, and say 0, 0, 0, 76%, and then we are going to add 0px, 2px, and 4px. Alright, and within that particular div we want that text content of x to be centered, so we're going to say text align center. So this should be it for now for the cross that we have. Alright, so I realized that since in our CSS we have added toast, multiple hyphens, and multiple hyphens success and error, I just added one hyphen over here, so let's just add two of them. So now this should work fine when we later on go ahead and try to render the toast. So now after this, let's try to at least view the toast that we have. That is pretty important, right? So you get an idea of whether or not all the styles that we have added and the classes that we have set and appended into the document is actually coming into effect or not. So first of all, we will view the toast, and after that we will add the setRemainingTime and the removeToast functionalities. Alright, so to be able to view the toast first, we need to go ahead and add some logic in the setToastPlacement function that we have over here, because this setToastPlacement is going to add the placement of the container. Currently we are just appending the toast in the container that we have. Like over here you can see in the container top or container bottom we are appending the toasts, but the container top and container bottom itself don't have proper styling within them to be able to display the toast. So we already have the UI for the toast set, but the container within which the toasts are present isn't styled yet. So the container top and container bottom needs to be positioned properly so that we are able to view the individual toasts. So let's go ahead and make changes in the setToastPlacement function. Now the setToastPlacement function takes these two parameters, the position and the container. So we'll add that over here, position and container, and then let's make sure to select all the toasts that currently are being rendered. So query selector all, and we are going to select all the toasts. Alright, so the toasts variable will contain all the toast that must have popped up after we click on the show toast button. Now after this, what we're going to do is pretty important, so pay attention. I'm going to declare a variable named top or bottom. So this top or bottom is going to define whether the container is going to be set at the top or bottom. Now, how do we extract that top or bottom? So in the position that we have over here in the script chase, we send the top center right as an argument. We can send this as per our own wish, right? We can set top left, bottom right, and so on. Here we have sent top center right. So this top center is within this position. So what we can do is to determine whether it's top or bottom. First of all, we can do something like this. We can do position dot substring, and then we are going to make use of this substring function to check what's before this hyphen, and then whatever is before that hyphen, in this case it's top, we are going to add it in this variable, right? And if it was bottom, then bottom would have been added. So how do we do that? I'm going to say 0 because we are starting from 0, and we need to go on till the position dot index of, and I'm going to say till the hyphen. All right, so it's going to go from 0 till the position dot index of hyphen. And when we add all of this within the substring itself, so the substring is going to check the 0th position till the element before the position dot index of the hyphen. All right, so this will allow us to get whether it's top or the bottom based on the position that we send as the argument. Now the next part that we require after this is the placement. Now that's also pretty obvious. The placement is basically the center or the left, right, because we are going to say top center top left top right, or bottom center bottom left bottom right. So this part is going to be the placement, and here we are sending center as the placement. So all we have to do is we have to again use that substring method, and we have to check for what's after the hyphen, and that is going to be the placement. Pretty easy, right? Going to say position dot substring, and then I'm going to say position dot index of, position dot index of will take from the hyphen plus 1. So what's happening here? We are not adding a comma after anything because we want to access the string right till the end. So if we add only one argument over here, then it's going to return everything till the end from wherever we have specified. So we have specified position dot index of hyphen plus 1. So it's going to start from here, from C, and since we haven't added a second argument, it's going to return us everything that's there till the end of the string. So it's going to return us the entire center. Alright, so now we have the top or bottom and also the placement. Now since we have the top or bottom and placement, we need to remember one thing. Like in our main build, in our final build, you can notice when I click on the show toast multiple times, you see here that each toast is a certain amount of margin above the other toast, right? If I click it again, you can see they all have a certain amount of spacing. So to do that, we need to loop through each of those toasts, and we need to add a margin top independently to each of those toasts, right? So that they have a certain number of margin between each of those toasts. So to do that, all we have to do is toast dot for each, and then I'm going to select the individual toast, and then after that I'm going to do a pretty simple if statement. I'm going to say if top or bottom that we defined over here to check if whether we are going to use the top container or the bottom container. So in this case it's the top container, so we are going to say if top or bottom is equal to top, then in that case we are going to say toast dot style dot margin top, sorry, this should be toast dot style dot margin top is equal to nothing but 20px. Let's just give it 20px, and then we are going to do the same for the else statement. But obviously if the top or bottom is bottom, in that case, because we are going to the else statement, we are going to make this margin bottom, and then we are going to give it a total of 20px. So when we do this, it adds the 20px margin top or bottom to each of those individual toasts, even to the first child. And that is the reason why in the toast.css I added the first child as minus 20px, because otherwise the first child will always have a margin top of 40px, right? So that's why I made sure that the margin top of the first child becomes minus 20px. So I hope you're clear about that now. Now after this, we also need to make sure that we add a little bit of style to the container. So what I'm going to do is the first default style I'm going to add to the container is I'm going to say container.style top or bottom, and I'm gonna make it 20px. So the entire container which we have, which is bottom, which is container top or container bottom, could be any, the top or the bottom of that container is going to be 20px from the top or the bottom. So the container of course has a style property since it's a div, and we are selecting the top or the bottom style property of that div, and we are setting it to 20px. And now the only part remaining to add in this function, in this setToastPlacement function, is the placement. We are getting the placement over here. We have this variable which is acquiring the placement from the position. Now based on the placement, whether it's left, right or center, we need to adjust our container accordingly. So for that, all I can do is I can add a switch statement and I can say placement. Now for the switch statement, we are going to have to add certain cases, right? So the placement can either be center, left or right. So for the case center, it's gonna have some styling. For the case left, it's going to have some styling, and for the case right, it's going to have some other styling. All right, so for this case of center, let's add the styling. All we're going to do is we're going to do container.style.left, and we're going to make it equal to 50%, because whenever the placement is center, so regardless of it being top or bottom, it should be centered. So the left should be 50%, and then the container.style.transform equals to nothing but translate, and I'm going to say minus 50%. So this is going to center out the container top or container bottom, whichever we have for the particular set of toasts being rendered. And then for the left, it's pretty simple. And also we need to make sure that we break this switch statement once one case is over, because we don't want to go to the other cases, of course. And then if it's a left case, then for that we can do container.style.left, and we are just going to simply add equal to 20px, because if the placement is set to left, we don't want to add it as 0 to the left, right? Because then it's going to be completely attached to the left. That's why I'm adding this 20px, so that there's going to be a little bit of spacing from the left. And then of course we need to break this, and then we're going to do the same for the right, just that except left, we are going to write right over here. And that's all. And that's it for the placement, for the setToastPlacement function. Now we should almost be able to see our toast being rendered on our browser. So I don't think we need to do anything else for now to be able to see the toast. The remaining parts that we have is setRemainingTime and the removeToast function. We are going to do that, but first, just to make you guys see what we have done so far, let's go ahead and check if we are getting the toast rendered or not. I'm going to go to the browser and I'm going to go to our build. I'm going to refresh, and upon clicking on set toast, there you go, you can see the toast come up. So currently we don't have the time mentioned over here, but we are getting the success toast message over here and the background color as green, since in our script.js we passed the type as success and the message as success toast, and here we had put top center. So you can see that setToastPlacement function is adding the toast in the top center. And just to verify if our placement is working or not, I'm going to add this as bottom center. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to click on show toast. There you go, you can see that shaky effect also come, and it's visible in the bottom center. If I just refresh it again and I click, you can see it's shaking, and then it's transitioning into the screen. All right, and now when I click on the cross, nothing happens, and this timer is also not present. So let's add that. We also need to add the functionality that once the timer ends, the toast should end on its own, or if the user clicks on this cross button before the timer ends, it should still close up on its own. That should be pretty simple. Let's go ahead and add the functionality for that. Also, if you have been enjoying this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it motivates me to make more such projects similar to this. Alright, so after this, all we need to do is we need to go to our show function, and after toast.classlist.add, we need to add some more logic and make use of this setRemainingTime and populate this function as well to be able to get that remaining time UI. So first of all, let's make sure to add this constant variable named deleteId. This is going to be nothing but document.getElementById, and it's going to get or this.counter. So you remember as I had said, I'm going to set a unique ID to each of those toasts, and it's going to increment this counter that I have set over here in this object, right? So that each toast is going to have a unique counter value. So I'm going to make a variable deleteId, and I'm going to get element by ID for that particular counter. So now what this does is each toast is now going to have a deleteId variable, which we are getting from the counter. So while each of those toasts gets instantiated, so when we click the button once, this function gets called. When that happens, this deleteId gets attached to that particular toast, and when multiple toasts get rendered, each of those toasts also get this deleteId attached to them. Now since this reference of deleteId is attached to those particular independent toasts, so I can use this deleteId later on to get rid of that toast or to remove that toast. Now let's see how to do that. Now let's make use of that cross that we had. That cross is also going to remove the toast, and at the same time when the timer ends, we should also remove the toast. So all I'm going to do is cross.add event listener, and I'm going to say click, and then I'm going to call a callback, and in this callback I will be calling that removeToast function that we have down there, and in this removeToast I'm going to pass the deleteId. Alright, so now this removeToast that we have over here attached to this toast object is going to receive the deleteId. Alright, so now let's just make sure first of all that when we click on the cross button, the toast gets removed, and then we are going to do it for the timer as well. So since we're passing the deleteId over here, now to remove that particular toast is going to be pretty easy, since we already have the reference of that particular toast from this deleteId now. Now to be able to delete this, all we have to do is write deleteId dot remove. Pretty simple, right? We are just using the remove function provided by JavaScript, and we have the reference to that particular toast through the deleteId, and we are removing that particular toast div from the DOM. So let's save this and try if it works. I'm going to click on show toast. The toast appears. Now when I click on the cross icon, there you go, you saw it got removed. I click on the show toast, and if I click on the cross icon, there you go, it got removed again. But you might think we are done with this yet, but we are not. You might notice here that when I click on the cross icon, the toast just goes away pretty quickly. So if I click on the cross icon, it just goes away abruptly. There's no animation on it. So in this final build that we have, you can see if I click on the show toast and then I click on this, it goes away very smoothly. If I click on the show toast again, and if I click on the cross, see how smoothly it goes away with the proper transition. But here it just goes away pretty abruptly, pretty directly. So now how do we add that smooth transition when we click on the cross? So before removing an element from the DOM, how do we add that smooth transition? So to do that, all I'm going to do is before removing it, I'm going to access the deleteId, and I'm going to attach to it a particular class, and I'm going to name it hidden. So let's go ahead and add this hidden class first. All right, I'm going to say .hidden, and then in hidden I'm going to say visibility of hidden, opacity of 0, and then a transition of nothing but all 0.5 seconds linear. All right, so this is going to help us to achieve that particular smooth transition that we have, but this won't work right out of the box. So even though I'm adding the class list of hidden before removing it and adding that transition on it, it still won't work. Let's check it out. I'll click on show toast, and if I click on the cross, you see it still abruptly goes away. Now you might be wondering, how can it go away abruptly when I'm adding that class list? That's because when I click on that cross button, the moment it adds this hidden class, it removes it right away. So we don't get to witness that particular animation come up. So we need to add an event listener that waits for a particular event, and only after that we need to remove it from the DOM. So to do that, all we need to do is deleteId dot add event listener, and then I'm going to listen for an event that JavaScript provides named transitioned. You can read about this in the docs. So in that, I'm going to call a callback, and once the transitioned event has been completed, then I will remove it from the DOM. So basically this class list dot add adds the hidden class, then this transition, the visibility becomes hidden, opacity 0 with a certain linear transition, and once this transition is over, this transitioned event is called, and then after that the deleteId.remove is called. So this is a pretty important information because you can use this a lot in many different instances. So whenever the transition ends, this transitioned event is going to trigger, and after that this delete.remove is going to be called. And since we have attached this event listener to that particular deleteId toast, to that particular deleteId, so that's why it will look for the transition to be over for that particular toast, since we have attached that transition as well to that same deleteId. Alright, so now the remove works perfectly fine. As you can see, if I click on show toast and I remove, it's going to transition and remove. On show toast and I remove, it's going to transition and remove. That's perfect. And another thing you can notice is if I click this multiple times, then each of these toasts have a certain amount of distance between them, and that is because of this that we added over here, this margin top, right? All right, so now let's just refresh this, and now let's add the timer logic. That's the last logic for this entire toast. So now for the timer, let's just go ahead and at the end of this show function, let's add a set timeout, right? So set timeout, and then in the callback we are going to access the removeToast. Pretty simple, right? removeToast, and we are going to pass the deleteId that we have defined over here for that particular toast. And here we can just pass the number of seconds into 1000, because the set timeout accepts milliseconds, and we have the seconds coming up from the argument over here. So if we pass seconds into 1000, it's going to convert it into milliseconds. All right, but now we also need to make sure that since whenever we click on the show toast button multiple times, multiple toasts pop out, we need to make sure that they also remove their particular time interval. Basically, they remove their set timeout that they have attached to themselves. So to do that, all we can do is over here, I'm going to declare a variable hide timeout. All right, and I'm going to set this to null initially, and I'm going to assign this in the show function. I'm going to assign it to the set timeout. All right, so the hide timeout is going to be equal to the set timeout. Now before we set the timeout for a particular toast, we need to check that if a particular timer exists or not. If it does, then we're going to simply just remove that timer. So I'm going to write clear timeout, which will remove the hide timeout. And right now, even if I just save this and I go to my browser, you won't be able to see the duration dialing down, but the logic will still work. So if I click on show toast, after 5 seconds, the toast should get automatically removed. Let's check that out. Click on show toast, let's wait for 5 seconds. And you see it transitions smoothly and gets removed. So all we need to do now is we need to add that timer on the left side to just make it look a little more cool, and so that the user can get informed regarding how much more time is left before the toast gets removed. Now the set remaining time takes the toast and the number of seconds. I'm going to add that over here, and we are going to write the logic for the same. So let's create a variable named time remaining, and I'm going to write document.createElement, and I'm going to make it a div, because obviously that number that we have, that number over here that we have, this is the final build, this is a div getting appended, right? And also the styling around it, all of this is a div, right? So let's go ahead and add that. Time remaining is going to contain that, and over here also we have to remove the interval gradually. So I'm going to say remove interval, it will be null initially, and after that I can say time remaining dot text content is equal to, pretty simple, we just need to make it equal to this number of seconds. So the text within that div is going to be number of seconds, and then time remaining dot class name, let's just write class name is equal to time remaining. We're going to give it a class name of time remaining, which we're going to style soon enough. So after this, to add that particular calculation where the time goes from 5, 4, 3 to 1 and so on, we need to make sure that we add a set interval which gets called upon after every second. And when it gets called upon after every second, we will subtract 1 from the total number of seconds that we have. All I'm going to say is set interval, and over here I'm going to pass a function, and all this function is going to do is that it's going to minus the seconds by 1. And then after this we want to call a function. Let's call it render, and this render is going to have, sorry, my bad, this render is going to be past the number of seconds that we have currently. And we also need to make sure that the set interval gets called after every 1 second. So what this is doing is basically after we add the text content as seconds, so initially suppose we have added the seconds as 5, the time remaining is going to be 5, and then this set interval is going to get called. It's going to make the seconds to 4, and then the set interval is going to be called, and then after 1 second it's going to make the seconds from 5 to 4, and then it's going to pass it to a render function. And what that render function is going to do is something like this. That render function is going to be assigned to a function which takes the seconds which is being passed over here. So this seconds is equal to this over here, so this second is basically being referenced over here, and over here we are going to say time remaining dot text content is equal to nothing but the second. We need to add the $sign over here. So to give you a proper overview of what this function is doing, over here in the time remaining dot text content, the time remaining is initially set to the number of seconds. So let's consider the number of seconds is 5. The time remaining is initially 5, and then when we go down over here and we reach the set interval, a 1 second interval gets added. So initially the time remaining text is 5. After 1 second, the contents of this function is called. So after 1 second, the 5 becomes 4 because of the seconds minus minus, and that particular 4 is passed to this render function over here. So when render takes the latest duration, which is 4 in this case, it goes over here, and then this second is referencing to this seconds, and then we are updating the time remaining text to nothing but the latest second that we have, which is being passed from here. Alright, so that's pretty simple to understand. And we also need to make sure over here that we remove the interval, right? So we need to assign remove interval equals to set interval, and all we can do over here is if the seconds equals to 0, then after that we can just clear the interval entirely. So once the seconds reaches 0, we can remove this interval, the set interval, completely. Otherwise it just loads up the application more and more with unnecessary timers. So this should be all. Alright, we can see that we are not making use of this toast over here, and that's because we need to append this time remaining to that toast, right? So we need to do a toast.append child, and we need to append the time remaining. So within that toast, this time remaining is going to be appended the text that we have. Now lastly, all we need to do is just add the styling for this time remaining class. So I'm going to go to my toast.css, and I'm going to add the styling for the time remaining. So the time remaining will have a display of flex, a justify content of center, and align items of center as well. And then it's going to have a font size of 30px, a font weight of, let's say, 600, a color of white, position of, it should be absolute because we want to make it absolutely to the left, and then a margin of auto, a top of 0, a left of 0, and a height of, let's say, 100%. It needs to take the complete height in the left. And then let's just give it a cursor of pointer, a padding of 2px top and bottom, and 5px left and right, and a width of, let's say, somewhere around 12%. And after that, just to make it uniform with the border radius of 5px for the entire toast, we are just going to make it have a border bottom left radius of 5px and a border top left radius of 5px. Alright, now after this, let's just give it a nice little background color. Let's say 044 DDC, and then let's also give it a linear gradient to make it look much better. I'm going to say linear gradient, and I'm going to add it a degrees of 274 degree, and I'm going to add the color as 2280 F4AB, and it's going to be 0%. And after that, 1870C1 and 74%. Let me just save all of this, and I think that's all we need to do for this. Alright, so I have saved it. I'm going to save the toast.js file as well. And now we can just go to our browser and check if everything works fine. So I'm going to go to my browser. So now I'm just going to go ahead and check if the timer works fine or not. So before we do that, I just want to make sure that I make this top center so that we can view the changes properly. And then now if I go to the browser, so now once I click on the show toast button, the timer should be displayed in the toast, and the duration should also change per second. And once it ends, it should all get removed on its own. So let's see if that works. If I click on show toast, there you go. You can see this timer is visible over here, and it's also decreasing 1 by 1 per second, and in the end it goes away on its own. Now I noticed a bug that was present in the code. I realized that this event present over here has been named the wrong way, and to show you what problem this is going to give us, I'm going to go to the browser, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the show toast multiple times. So now you can see that when this toast ends, these do not go up, right? So in our final build, what we had is when the top toast disappears, all the other toasts go one level up, as you can see again. And the other issue you can see is when I click on the toast again, it starts from here. It doesn't start from the top. If I click on it again, it's not going to work only anymore. And that's happening. I'll tell you why. It's because this event is wrong. Because this event hasn't been set right, so it's never being able to go in here and remove it from the DOM. We are able to hide the particular toast, and that's why you see the toast getting hidden, not being visible anymore. But we are never able to remove the particular toast from the DOM because this event is never being fired. And that's why you could see when we clicked on show toast again, that particular toast started from here and not from the top, because all the toasts until here weren't removed. So it got appended over here. So to fix that, all we need to do is we just need to rename this properly. This should be transition end, not transitioned. All we have to do is transition end. I'll save this. And now if I go to my browser, refresh everything, and then I try to click on the show toast multiple times, then you can see after this ends, it's smoothly going to go up one by one. Because those individual toasts at the top get removed from the DOM this time actually, so the bottom ones get pushed upward. And now if I click on this again, it's going to start from the top and not from the middle, because all the existing toasts were removed. So now you can see if I click on the toasts again and again, you can see each of them slide up one by one after it ends with a beautiful transition. And this is exactly what we wanted. And now if I change the position to anything, it's all going to work well and fine. If I make this top right and I click on the toast, you can see top right come up. And if I consider I'll just close any toast in between, I can just close this. Now you can see it disappears. If I try this again, I'll close this one, disappears, and even the bottom one still slides up with a perfect transition. And now I can also change the message to error toast. This should be error type, and let's try to decrease the timer to 3 seconds, and let's make this top left. And now I'll go and click show toast. There you can see the red color error 1 with 3-second timer. I can click this multiple times. You can see a 3-second timer pop up. Right, so this works perfectly fine. All the positions work fine. The number of duration also works fine. The type of toast, the message, everything works perfectly fine. And the best thing is, all you have to do to use this toast is just use this toast.show and add all these arguments within it. So what you could do is you could create any number of files over here, and then you could just simply use toast.show and pass in your custom preferred arguments, and based on that you could render the specific toast. And all the main logic would be bundled within this toast folder, mainly in the toast.js file. So this is the power of creating an object and assigning it its own set of functions to create something valuable like this. And also don't forget to use the toast.init. You could either add this at the root directory of your entire application. In that case, you would only have to use toast.show in all the other files. But if you only want toast to be initiated in particular files only, then you could simply add toast.init first at the top of the file and then use toast.show accordingly. So now before I end this video, I realized that there is one refactor that we can do. So the refactoring we can make here is, you can see this clear timeout present over here. So this clear timeout, hide timeout doesn't make any sense if it's placed in this line, because whenever I click the show toast button, this clear timeout runs first, and at that time this hide timeout is never attached to a particular timeout. And since each of those toasts are independent of each other, each of those toasts which get displayed when we click on show toast multiple times, they are independent of each other. So basically, after this clear timeout, hide timeout line, hide timeout gets set to the set timeout over here. So for each of those toasts, whenever we clear the timeout, the hide timeout will never have the timer set to it. So what makes more sense is if we add this clear timeout within this removeToast function, because when we click on the cross icon, or whenever the toast get displayed, it automatically gets a timer attached to it, right? So when we click on the cross, or when we wait for the timer to end, in both those cases the removeToast gets called. You can see over here and over here, the removeToast gets called. So we need to make sure that whenever the toast is removed within the removeToast, after that we clear this timeout. Otherwise, whenever we hit this line while creating that toast, this hide timeout will be null. It will never be having the timeout. So what makes more sense is, I'll just clear this out from here, and I will pass that hide timeout variable to this removeToast function, and I will also do the same over here, hide timeout. And then now within the removeToast function, I'm going to scroll below, and within the removeToast function, after the deleteId.remove, we are simply going to remove that timer, or basically clear that timer. And we also need to get this from the argument. So now every time we click on the show toast and the timer starts, whether we click on the cross icon or the timer ends, in both cases removeToast gets called, and at that time when it reaches this line, the hide timeout will be having that timer attached to it. So when we clear timeout for that hide timeout, it will actually clear the timeout. So this makes more sense. Now if I save this and I go to my browser, you will notice everything still works fine. I'll just click on show toast. You can see the toast pop up just about fine, and all of them smoothly transition and disappear. Alright, so this is all about the refactor, and with this we are done with building this project. You can obviously go ahead and add a lot of custom features of your own, but this video and this project, until how much I have shown you, is going to give you a lot of information and knowledge about how to proceed and add more and more new features into this project. So if you really enjoyed this video, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.